The recent release of Morbius took the world by storm in a way that Sony certainly didn't expect. Instead of drawing fans' love, it drew laughter and memes from every direction. While it was definitely a disaster of a movie, there was at least one thing that the film didn't do: it didn't make fans furious. There have been many films over the years that drew fans into a complete rage. It can happen if a specific character was an insufferable human being, a movie was beyond awful, or a beloved character was killed off without any reason at all. Whatever the reason, there have been many movies that made fans unbearably angry. X-Men: The Last Stand. The end of the original X-Men trilogy has received major criticism over the years, but it's also earned the ire of fans. After all, despite being an adaptation of one of the best X-Men comic storylines, X-Men: The Last Stand decided to completely diverge the narrative. In the process, they chose to kill off Cyclops and ruined the ending. Reddit user CyberRiot9 says, "Being a fan of the comics and cartoon, I spent the rest of the movie up to the climax thinking, are they bringing Cyclops back? Isn't he supposed to be the one to stop Jean?" While that alone wouldn't be a sign that the movie was failing to bring fans what they wanted, the inability to stick to the source material infuriated fans, given that the Dark Phoenix saga was already so great. Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. While it was certainly a box office success, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom didn't satisfy its viewers. "I loathe Fallen Kingdom," says Redditor @unknown. "It was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in theaters. With an incomprehensible plot, weak characterization, and a breakneck pace that left many fans without space to breathe, it makes sense it would anger nostalgic fans." Filled with mistakes that Jurassic World: Dominion should avoid, Fallen Kingdom failed to respect any of its characters and often treated them like nothing more than comic relief. It made it difficult to comprehend the high stakes of the situation, which certainly can infuriate viewers. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. While certainly an extraordinary movie, there are some fans who found One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to be too much to handle. "My anger against Nurse Ratched was of biblical proportions," says Redditor Maccabi. "To a point it derailed my studies towards biochemistry. Considering that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest makes its conflicts feel real and grounded, Nurse Ratched feels like a real-world villain, which doesn't help keep tempers down." Still, the fact that viewers were that angry at the film means that it did something right. Ratched is supposed to be utterly despised, and she certainly is. Holmes and Watson, a movie that scored a mere 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, Holmes and Watson is one of the worst films of the decade. "It was so bad it was insulting. I was horrified that it was a real movie," says Reddit user State of Brine. Turned it off after only a few scenes. Although the film was attempting to be a comedy, there were never any scenes that were actually funny. Instead, the movie just continually made references to modern inventions and concepts and assumed that was enough to be a joke. Failing to capitalize on the Holmes and Watson dynamics that fans have loved for centuries, the movie has earned utter fury. Artemis Fowl. Another movie hated for being a failed adaptation, Artemis Fowl failed to treat its source material with any respect. It was like the writers read the blurb on the back of the book and based the entire movie on that, completely ignoring 95% of the book, says Reddit user Tortoisefly. Instead of acknowledging Artemis Fowl as an evil genius, as the books do, the film struggles to keep its main characters likable. In many other films, that would be perfectly fine, but an adaptation of Artemis Fowl trying to make Artemis relatable is inherently failing to adapt him. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. While the Star Wars fanbase tends to devolve into infighting, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker has earned its infamy. In hindsight, the prequels and sequels severely wounded my childhood love of Star Wars, but Rise was the final killshot, says Reddit user GDJT. Every scene made me angry at either its absurdity or simply at its bad writing. A movie that brought Palpatine back with a ludicrous explanation, retconned Rey's origins to tie her to the original trilogy, and completely forgot about one of its characters in Rose. Rise felt like an insult more than a film. Instead of neatly wrapping up the trilogy, it threw in new elements out of nowhere and failed to address many elements of the preceding two films. Limitless. There are few sci-fi concepts as unique as Limitless. Unfortunately, it fails to actually explore those concepts. You've got this epic Matrix-like drug that makes the film so interesting, says Reddit user Shulala100, before remarking about a villain that wants to use it to start an import-export business. NZT was meant to be a drug that would make any user a super genius, but few people actually take advantage of it. Instead, many are content to remain small-time dealers or billionaires, making it seem like the movie didn't really care about the consequences. The fact that the drug wasn't immediately hoarded by a supervillain felt unrealistic. World War Z. While it's one of Brad Pitt's best action movies, World War Z ruined any chance that book readers had of a genuine adaptation. I am just so mad they took one of my favorite books, teased everyone with it, and then made a movie that had almost nothing to do with the original IP, says Reddit user time_ADC. The book, which is meant to be an audio retelling of a zombie apocalypse, splits into several narratives centering around different protagonists. Having one central character exploring a small chunk of those stories meant that fans wouldn't get to see the Battle of Yonkers or many other major events. It was extremely disappointing, which is why it made so many readers so furious. Dragon Ball Evolution. Another incredibly poor adaptation, Dragon Ball Evolution has made viewers unbearably angry. Its story is bad. Its characters are bad. The effects are bad. The funniest thing about the dialogue is that anybody could think it's good, says Reddit user Deadlock. It's got literally zero redeeming qualities. For fans of Dragon Ball and non-fans alike, the movie was an utter disgrace. With weak characters with entirely different backstories than in the source material, a tiresome and uninteresting romance, and character deaths that no character cared about, it was a confusing mess, and the dialogue certainly didn't help. Avatar: The Last Airbender. While Dragon Ball Evolution was bad, Avatar: The Last Airbender made viewers so unbearably angry that many have taken to pretending that it doesn't exist. The absolute incompetent, brain-meltingly baffling decisions that were on display, the absolute lack of skill. That was all insulting enough on its own, says Redditor Artful Megalodon. On top of those problems, the film was hamstrung by poor dialogue, terrible special effects, and pacing made worse by an attempt to cram an entire season into one movie. The acting also didn't help, as most of the child actors struggled with believability. The entire film felt like a disgrace to loyal fans of the cartoon, and it certainly drew fury.